Okay, so today I wanted to talk about great later career albums. And so basically, these are albums that an artist released deep into their career or after they turn 40. That's my criteria today. And so the genesis of this video was I was talking to one of my friends about Janet Jackson Unbreakable, and I said it's a great later career album. And then I remember that I had this idea to even make in the first place. So, what do I really like about this album? Well, Unbreakable, the song, is one of my favorite Janet Jackson songs of all time. Just brings me so much joy to listen to. I love the chords and the progressions there, her vocals, the lyrics. It's a really pure song. It is, and I love it. Burn It Up with Missy Elliott is a favorite as well. I love the collaborations. I love Broken Hearts Heal. It was a touching tribute to Michael. She also had other great songs on there like Black Eagle. She had Night, Lessons Learned, and Should Have Known Better. She's even reflecting back on Rhythm Nation. I had a dream, and unfortunately, I couldn't bring that to reality. I should have known better. I'm only one person, but I can appreciate her effort with that album. And so, yeah, I just think that there's a lot to like about this album, and what I appreciated about it the most, I felt, is that it still feels like Janet, feels a little bit grown up, like I'm not cringing at it. It still feels like a great piece artistically. Even with the song like No Sleep, I really like that song. J. Cole feature on it is a chop. I don't really go for J. Cole, and now I've been vindicated on that. But I really enjoyed this album. I really did. I hope that Janet releases more albums in her career. If we could just get one final one, that would be amazing. But if this is her last album that she ever releases, I think this is a fine body of work to go out on. I really do. Only song I don't care for on this album is Damn Baby. That's a skip for me. But besides that, A plus in my book, one of my favorite Janet Jackson albums. And this is how you do a later career album. Next up, we got Caution by Mariah Carey. You guys already knew that this was coming. Another template on how to make a great later career album. And what I always appreciate about Mariah is her ability to adapt with the times, and I'll say that over and over. And that's what makes Caution so great, is she has a little bit more of a modern production to it, but it still feels like Mariah. I really enjoyed her vocals on this album. Her songwriting is great on this. The production really fits her voice, and I think this album has aged super well. If you ever wanted to get into Mariah and you want a recent album and some more contemporary R&B, then I would definitely say listen to Caution. And there's definitely some career highlights on here. Some of my favorite songs: Giving Me Life, top 5 Mariah Carey song all the time, and I love what Slick Brick and Blood Orange, brought to the song. Overall, amazing psychedelic production, that guitar solo at the end, the sample on the song, just like a fine wine. That song is excellent. 8th Grade, gorgeous piece, another one of my favorites and most played on this album to this day. And then GTFO, it was kind of the fire starter for this record. It doesn't take itself too seriously, and that's actually what I really like about the song. The Distance definitely should have been a single on the album. I feel like we can all agree on that. Caution, the song, I feel is quite underrated. Only skip on this is Stay Long Love You. And if I do listen to it, I skip through goodness parts. And Portrait is definitely underrated on this album, I will say. I always felt like it was a more modernized version of Looking In. And so I appreciate this album a lot. I love the album cover. I appreciate the era. It really irritates me how they fumbled the bag in terms of promoting it. Why would you release half the album before the album even comes out and then they didn't promote it enough? This album deserved so much more on the charts. I have a whole video talking about it. But yeah, this is just some fine work for Mariah. And I just feel like a lot of people, when they're this deep into their career, they cannot pull something like this off. And that just really shows the genius that Mariah is. Not even to mention the bonus track Runway, which she is sampling her own song Butterfly on, which is another one of my favorite Mariah Carey songs of all time. So I have high praise for Caution. It's one of my favorite Mariah Carey albums, and certainly one of my most played. Next up, we got Renaissance by Beyonce. When I first listened to it, I was like, okay, this is a good album. There's some songs I didn't really go for, like Thick, Move. Those have really grown up in me. Still don't really care about All Up in Your Mind too much unless it was live, and the first pot of Pure Honey is certainly a skip for me. But, the album is really strong. I mean, Alien Superstar, what an iconic moment. I'm That Girl is an opener. One of the best openers of all time, I fear. And some of my other favorite songs, Virgo's Roof. I mean, just her vocal performance on that song is absolutely insane to listen to. And I also really like the production on there. And Plastic Off the Sofa has always been one of my favorites upon first listen. America Has a Problem, so much fun to listen to. It was always in my top 5. And you also have some other great cuts on here, like Cozy, I feel like is a little bit underrated on here as well. Energy is a lot of fun to listen to, I will say that. I can appreciate Break My Soul as a lead. I can appreciate that as the lead. Also, Church Girl is a great moment. So I just really like this album because Beyonce was getting into dance. She was getting into house. You have some classic R&B moments that if you really wanted to hear that, then you can hear that from Beyonce as well. And one of the things I appreciate about Beyonce is the fact that she doesn't let herself get boxed into what people expect from her and just keep doing the same thing over and over again. She's always going to evolve artistically. And so this album is just incredible. One of the best albums of the decade, I fear. It was amazing to see live, and I have played this album out. Love it to pieces. Next up, we got some Aretha Franklin, So Damn Happy. I just heard this album recently and I absolutely love it. I think that it is a phenomenal record. No skips on it for me. I love the title track. I love Wonderful on this album as well. Yeah, it's just a great piece. It really is. I think Aretha's voice really fits well on this production. And again, it feels like an involvement artistically, and it doesn't feel like she's trying too hard. Everything just really clicks on here. Amazing vocals on here. I love the songwriting on here. And yeah, it's really great. Next up, Fionaapple, Fetch the Bolt Cutters. So this is actually my first Fionaapple album, and if you're looking to get into her, do not start off with this album. Start off with her second album, When the Pawn, trust me, because this album is very unconventional in terms of the vocal deliveries, the instrumentation, all that kind of stuff. It just took me time to really get into it, and so I'll say that. But as an album, amazing. Some of my favorite songs in here, Rack of His. It always reminds me of the show Sex and the City, and I love that show. And I just really enjoyed her kind of moments there. Cosmonauts is definitely an underrated moment on this album. Shamika, talking about a girl that she used to know in school and saying Shamika thought I had potential, and even like meeting her in real life and connecting there. That's just a fascinating piece. I Want You, Love Me is a really great opener for this album. Newspaper, I love the percussion on there particularly as well, and so I just appreciate this album. I appreciate her introspection. Like, this very much sums up 2020 in one album, even going on to songs like Ladies, and that's kind of her dissecting her relationship with women, how men have had an impact in that, and how it even got to that point in the first place, and trying to deconstruct that the best that she can and find the best in it, and how complicated that can be. And that's just a gorgeous song for her. It's definitely a personal piece on this album. I just think Fiona is brilliant as a songwriter. She's one of my favorite songwriters of all time, and she's a fantastic piano player as well. I already mentioned Shamika, and that's a really great piece just in terms of the piano, and I like the production. I like how stripped back it is, and also a great title track on here as well. I forgot to mention that one. Relay was a great moment on this album. It's just so good. It really is that good. Next up, we got some Paul McCartney. So this is Chaos and Creation in the Backyard. Paul McCartney had been at it for such a long time at this point, debuting with the Beatles in the 60s. This album came out 2005. So yeah, he had already been in the game for a while, and he delivered an excellent album. Some of my favorite songs in this, I really enjoy Jenny Wren, just the guitar piece on there as well. I also liked Riding to Vanity Fair. I feel like it's a very moody piece, which I liked, and I feel like Paul doesn't really get into that headspace a lot, and all of his stuff for the most part is very positive and pretty simplistic, which is what I like about him. I think he's a great songwriter, but I really liked what he was tapping into with that song. Too Much Rain, I thought, was a really beautiful piece on this album as well. And what's a nice body of work, really. His songwriting is sharp as ever. His vocals sound pretty good. I like the production in here. And I'm pretty sure he even said the producer was just honest with him. Like, he was making sure that he was getting to all the good songs on this album, telling him, cut this song, keep that song, and he was just being real with him. And that's why we get a masterpiece all these years later into Paul McCartney's career. What a fine body of work. Also gotta mention Egypt Station, the Explorers Edition by Paul McCartney. I really enjoy this one. Some of my favorite songs in here, I like Dominoes, Despite Repeated Warnings. Who Cares, I think, is an underrated track on this album. I Don't Know is an insane opener. Last up, Chemistry by Kelly Clarkson. This was my album of the year this past year. Chemistry, the song, is one of my favorite songs I've ever heard. It's just a beautiful piece talking about chemistry that we have with other people, how that can change over time, how that affects us, and it's a lot of food for thought. And lyrically, I think it's one of her best. Favorite Kind of High was a great single. I Love, I Hate Love, That's Right, featuring Sheila E. is certainly underrated as well. I mean, the whole album was underrated. It deserves so much more. I feel like I was one of the only people who went in for this album and gave it the praise that it deserved. But a personal album for her, there's, multiple moods of a relationship, and she's just kind of showing the arc of a relationship. I think she does that beautifully, and I think we need to talk about this album a little bit more. But that is my list, and I just think after artists get to a certain age, people discard them, but you can make a lot of great stuff later in the career, and that's kind of what the point was. I think there can be some great gems, and let me know what you guys think of this down below. You might comment some albums I haven't heard before, and this is my list, but this was a lot of fun to do.